Attention, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin the award ceremony. And again, as time permits, if you need something else to eat or something to drink, you can always sneak away and do that. But we appreciate everybody coming here once again this evening for our second annual Hall of Fame banquet here at the Moorhead Post 21 Legion Club. Our first award inductee, it's almost like he doesn't need a introductory message here, but very important too. Our field that we play on today up in North Moorhead is named after this fine gentleman. It's Harold Peg Matson. And Mr. Matson, he grew up in Minnesota's Iron Range and graduated from Gilbert High School in 1927. He continued his education at Evelyn Junior High School and the Stout Institute, now the University of Wisconsin Stout, in Menominee, Wisconsin. Peg began his teaching career at Pine River, Lindstrom, Twin Valley, and Esco before joining the Moorhead High School staff in 1946 as an industrial arts instructor. That same year, he served as an assistant football coach and stepped in to help the athletic department when the athletic director was injured. In 1947, Peg coached the Moorhead American Legion baseball team and later guided the Pee Wee and Midget Youth baseball programs. Two of his former youth players, Lowell Bolger and Don Benson, were inducted into this Hall of Fame just this past year. Lowell Bolger shared that he was the only coach I had growing up. We practiced every day and he taught me every phase of the game. In my opinion, he created youth baseball in Moorhead. Don Benson added, Peg spent endless time with me on the mound teaching me the basics of pitching and the patience that made it work. He was the best coach I could have had at the time, and I was fortunate enough to have him as a mentor and a friend. Peg also made a lasting impact as Moorhead's first recreation director, overseeing summer youth baseball programs, touch football, and park activities. Many longtime residents still remember the energy and excitement of those afternoons at neighborhood parks. In December of 1958, Peg was admitted to the University of Minnesota Hospital and passed away suddenly on January 24th of 1959 at the age of 51. 1 month later, in February 1959, the Moorhead City Council honored his legacy by renaming the Northside Ballpark as Matson Memorial Field. Again, ladies and gentlemen, as a memorial, we do have a plaque that we are going to be placing at the City of Moorhead Parks and Rec in memorial of Harold Peg Matson. Let's give him a nice round of applause for all that he did for Moorhead baseball. Our next inductee is Mr. Ken Severud. Ken Severud was born in Madison, Wisconsin in 1930 and moved with his family to Moorhead in 1936. He graduated from Moorhead High School in 1948 and played American Legion baseball from 1945 to 1947. Because the Legion age limit at the time was 17, he was no longer eligible to play after graduation. In the spring of his senior year, Ken's father, Canute, took him to St. Paul for a Brooklyn Dodgers tryout. His performance earned him a minor league contract, along with a signing bonus of a brand new baseball and a fresh copy of the Sporting News. During spring training in Vero Beach, Florida, he earned $90 a month and met several of his baseball heroes, including Pee Wee Reese, Roy Campanella, Jackie Robinson, and Don Larson. He was assigned to the Dodgers minor league team in Cairo, Illinois, but an arm injury ended his pitching career. Ken went on to attend Concordia College, where he excelled in both basketball and baseball, earning all-conference honors in both sports, and in his final year, he served as both player and head coach. He was inducted into the Concordia Athletic Hall of Fame in 1994, and during his college summers, he played amateur baseball at the Holly Hawks. In 1949, the Red Falls Redbirds from 1950 to 51 and the Detroit Lakes Lakers in 1952. After graduating from Concordia with majors in socio-psychology and a minor in physical education, Ken served in the U.S. Army where he continued to play basketball and baseball. He later earned a master's degree in physical education from the University of Colorado. In 1955, Ken began his teaching and coaching career in Bagley, Minnesota, and played amateur baseball there from 1956 to 59. He moved to Robbinsdale in 1960, teaching and coaching ninth grade boys basketball for 27 years before retiring in 1987. In 1966, Ken became a PGA teaching professional at Braemar Golf Course in Edina, a role he continued each summer until age 85. His passion for teaching the game spanned over 5 decades. Ken and his wife Jan have been married for 63 years and still live in their original home in Minneapolis suburb. Their 2 children, Jen and Wayne, are both proud graduates of Concordia College. Again, how about a nice round of applause for Mr. Ken Severud? And we have this plaque here for him to come pick up. There you go, Ken. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Congratulations once again, Ken. Our next Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Paul Herwald. Paul was a multi-sport athlete at Moorhead High School, competing in both basketball and baseball. He played American Legion baseball from 1968 to 69. The 1969 Legion team finished runner-up at the state tournament and became the first Moorhead squad to advance to regional play. That same summer, Paul delivered one of the greatest pitching performances in Moorhead Legion history. He posted a 13-4 record and set marks that may never be matched. 135 innings pitched, 156 strikeouts, and a remarkable 1.05 ERA. In a 7-0 win over Bemidji, he famously closed the game by throwing 35 consecutive strikes. Paul graduated from Moorhead State with a major in chemistry and a minor in math, later spending a year at NDSU studying analytical chemistry. He began his career with 3M in 1974, working in nuclear medicine, and retired after 40 years with the company. His roles spanned research and development, sales, marketing, international operations, and general management. And his work took him around the world, including more than 35 trips to China. After high school, Paul took up golf and continued playing softball into his 40s. Today, he and his wife of 52 years, Carol, also a Moorhead State graduate, enjoy travel and spending summers at their Wisconsin lake cabin with their 4 children and 10 grandchildren. Once again, how about a nice round of applause for Mr. Paul Herwald. Come on up, Paul.
All right, I've been asked to say a few words. Hopefully it'll be a few. First of all, thanks to the committee here, for Keith and the crew for putting this all together. It's a very nice honor to be recognized after 57 years of playing baseball here. So it's a long time ago. For those of you, I did not grow up in Moorhead. I was brought here at the age of 14 in the month of January, which is not the best month to come to Moorhead for the very first time. So I was in 9th grade, 14 years old. I was a shy kid back then. So I didn't really have any friends, and so the best thing I had to look forward to was baseball in the summer, where you could come together with 12 of your friends and have a group of guys like that some are still my friends today. There's still a couple that still come today back. So I'll talk a little bit more about 1969, the baseball. So I watched the program last year that was taped. It was very good. Mike Hyostik was an inductee last year. And he was our coach. And he was brought here to have us play more baseball. And I think we played 55 games that summer in total, quite a few. But one of the things that we did, we had a trip to Billings, Montana. And that's where I grew up. So that was going back to my hometown. And we almost didn't go. And I learned from Mike's speech last year that the Legion ran out of money. So the only way we could go to the trip was Billings paid our way to go there. Anyway, Billings is a pretty big baseball town. They had a minor league team at one time for the Cardinals. And when I was a kid, I went to a game and Stan Musial played in that game, exhibition game with Billings. So we got to go there and play as a kid, and I got to pitch, and we beat Billings in front of 4,000 people. It was a fun trip. And then in our state tournament, the semifinals, we were down 1-0 in the ninth inning. One hit. We had one hit in 9 innings, and we scored 2 runs in the bottom of the ninth to beat Little Falls. So that was a great memory. It's a great honor to be here, and thanks for everybody for allowing us to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Again, a few special visitors that we have with us this evening, our current Blues and Golds head coaches over to the side here, Jack Noggle and Skylar Timmer. And again, yes, give them a nice round of applause. And our past Moorhead Blues post 21 coach, Mr. Bucky Burgo, also in attendance. Thanks, Bucky. Our next Hall of Fame inductee for 2026 for the Moorhead Legion, Mr. Greg Trolin. Greg was a standout 3-sport athlete at Moorhead High School, earning all-state honors in football, basketball, and baseball. He helped lead the 1968 Spuds basketball team to runner-up finishes at the state tournament. On the diamond, he played American Legion baseball from 67 to 69, posting a 12-2 pitching record in 1969 as the team finished second to Edina at the state tournament. That 1969 squad became the first Moorhead Legion team to advance to the regional tournament in Mandan. Greg was recruited by legendary Minnesota Gophers basketball coach Bill Fitch and earned a scholarship to play for the Gophers. Fitch would go on to coach nearly 30 seasons in the NBA. During Greg's junior season in 1972, the Gophers won the Big Ten championship, and one of his teammates was future baseball Hall of Famer Dave Winfield. After college, Greg began his coaching career in basketball with stops at Richfield High School in Minnesota and Montana State University. In the late 1980s, he returned to the region and spent more than 20 years as a sales manager covering an 11-state territory. Greg and his wife Chris have been married for 31 years, and they have one son, Dustin, with wife Jennifer, and 3 grandsons, Dylan, Logan, and Gavin. How about a nice round of applause for Mr. Greg Trolin? Want to say a few words here?
Sure. I might not ever sit down, though.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the committee. I know what committees are like. They're not fun. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of emails, a lot of telephone calls, and a lot of time spent. And on behalf of the inductees, I'm sure they feel the same way. Thank you for the love of Moorhead American Legion baseball, and that really helps. I want to recognize a couple of people. First of all, my family, Dustin, my son, Dylan, grandson, Jennifer, daughter-in-law, Logan, Gavin, and my wife that holds the glue together, Chris. they came here, and it's the first time they probably seen me with a mic, and they probably say, well, sit your rear end down. I also want to talk about three more. Mike Hyostik's not here, is he? Bucky Burgow, I'll tell you, for all the years that you have put in this program, you're the legend. You know, you should be inducted every year. You know, what you did for this Legion program and the success that you had during your tenure is unmatched. And I can only know of one other that in the 50s and 60s and 70s, Richfield American Legion, where I coached at, they were very proud, like Moorhead is. But you're the best. Another one, my first coach, Norm Feldy. Norm was the most unique. He was my sophomore and I think my junior year, but we all laughed. Norm was, there's only one of a kind. He would always be the third base coach, and instead of giving the hit and run sign or the steal, it'd be whistles. That was a hit and run. That was take a pitch. And there was hit and run, steal, and take a pitch. And he'd change every 3 innings, and wouldn't know what whistle he gave as a third base coach. But I had him his last 2 years, and he was an honor to play with. And then Coach Hyostik came to Moorhead High School and helped Bill Quinnett as the high school coach, and our senior year, and he was the assistant coach. And then the thing about Coach Hyostik was, you know, if I go in the hospital, I'm plugged in and everything, my chart looks like this, you know, I'm up and down. Mike was like this, just like that, beep, beep, and he always smiled. He always smiled. He was the easiest man of all the coaches I played for, from Goda to Quinnett to Bill Fitch to Bill Musselman. Mike Hyostik was a gem. The last guy, and I had a couple beers with him before, he thought the thing was at 3 o'clock today. That's what happens when you turn 90 years old. And he keeps on a ticking. Low Bolger. He is one of my best friends and was my high school basketball coach. And I would give my right, you can guess what I would give him in my life. I would tear out my heart for that man. He is one class act, and the town of Moorhead loves him like I do. And I told him tonight, I never thought that Mr. Hall of Famer at Moorhead State in basketball, and Hall of Fame, whatever, at Moorhead High School as a teacher, I never thought I would be inducted in the same company as the Bulge. The Bulge is the best, and I just love him dearly. The 3 years that we played, the first year I was a sophomore, made the state tournament in high school and in Legion, and both times we played Richfield. Both times Doug Kingensrider pitched against us, and Doug was from Richfield, got to know him real well because he was a football player at the U when I was there. But he threw a fastball that you didn't know where in the hell it was going. And he beat us both times. And that was the sophomore year. Norm's last year, we did not go to the state tournament. We got beat by some small town. And the last year, Paul, we Went to the state tournament. In fact, it was funny. I had to take 3 weeks off that summer because Bill Fitch said, you're going to be down at the U for 3 weeks for conditioning and all that crap with playing and weightlifting, et cetera, et cetera. So I missed about 2.5 weeks. And Coach Iasti called me back about 2 weeks left in the season. I'm sure glad he did. But we played in the state tournament at Rock Stadium at St. Cloud. And I can't remember who we played the first game we won. And then Austin the second game. So we're in the championship where the runner-up got to go to the regional. But guess who we lost to again? You know, Moorhead has an issue with Edina. I don't know what it is, but we lost to Edina that year. And then went to the regional, and that year we lost to Omaha 2-1 the first game, and we were up 1-0, and they got 2 runs in the 8th inning in the region. And our goal was to play that team across that sneaky river over here with that harder coach, Fargo Legion. And we beat them twice that year, twice. And they were 42-10. Well, 2 losses were to us. And so we were eliminated. We lost to Omaha, Sioux Falls, and Fargo went on to win the regional and go to the World Series. That was their first, but we had beat them twice. So that was the senior year, and I can remember, you know, these kids over here never take things for granted. Time goes fast, you know, from knothole to cadet league. Woodlawn Park, Kenny played there probably, you know, in 9th grade. And Babe Ruth, I had a record of 3 home runs. Well, they were really singles. They went in between 2 outfielders and rolled all the way through. So from Babe Ruth, we finished second, and then the baseball part and the memories that you have with teammates and the success or non-success. The lies get better every year. People's averages go up every year. Won and lost records go up every year. But what's important is the kids are out there and they represent Moorhead. And a player's lucky to represent this great town. And I thank the Legion, I thank the committee, whatever everybody can do to help fund this program. You know, finally the Matson is going to look like a baseball field with what they're doing. And keep it up. Thanks, guys. Go Moorhead. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We appreciate that. Yes, take your plaque. Thanks
gonna
for
take
the
it home.
fine words.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Greg, for those fine words, good memories. Next up on our list here, again, most people know him as Swanee, Chad Swanson. Chad grew up across the street from Matson Field, where he learned every position on the diamond and earned 25 cents for cleaning the dugouts at Matson Field. A 1983 Moorhead Spud High School graduate, he played on 3 Blues teams from 1981 to 83 that advanced to the state tournaments before continuing his baseball career at Concordia College and St. Cloud State University. Chad attended a Minnesota Twins tryout in 1986, and a year later, his Metrodome tryout earned him a spot with the Twins Class A affiliate in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He played in Kenosha from 1987 to 89 under the future Twin manager, Ron Gardenhire. In 1989, he was sent to Visalia of the California League, and while pitching there in 1990, A pinched nerve in his back ended his season, and he was released in 1991. Following his playing career, Chad returned to coaching first as a Little League coach in Moorhead from 1984 through 85, winning city championship both seasons, and later as an assistant coach for the Blues in 1991 and 1992. Since 2009, Chad has worked as a pattern maker for technical methods and also runs his own business, Mitmender. He lives in Burnsville, Minnesota, and is the proud father of 2 children, Nick and Sydney. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, let's give a nice round of applause to Swanee. Chad Swanson. There we go, Chad. Want to say a few words?
Sure. I want to thank everybody for being here. I mean, this is just a great honor. At this time last year, I had been given some bad news that I may have cancer, and the day after this banquet was Sunday at 10 a.m. I was going to have an MRI in St. Louis Park. Well, sure enough, I ended up having prostate cancer and had surgery in August. Right now I'm doing great. Blood tests and everything are great. October, I get a message from Keith Berg saying that I was voted into the Moorhead Baseball Hall of Fame. I think maybe they thought it was going to be better than having the award given to me posthumous, after I'm already gone. So I'm glad to be here. I'm really, really glad to be here. In August of 1965, that was the year I was born, I was 7 months old. My folks moved into 1404 11th Street North, which is right field, would be our front yard if there wasn't a damn road going through it. We moved from just on the south side of North Junior High to where I grew up. Mom set me down on the floor. Get this, I was 7 months old. Set me down on the floor of the living room, and I got up and I walked towards that front door. She always said I just wanted to get over to Matson. I was destined to put in some time over there. Growing up playing knothole and cadet baseball, for the VFW, Military Order of the Cooties, was a great time. I've had great coaches through my experiences. I don't really remember my knothole coaches, but I do remember John, excuse me, I had his name just a little while ago. But I'll skip past that, but I've had great coaches all the way through. The Babe Ruth, I played for FM Asphalt. I had a great coach there. I played 9 games for the Moorhead Golds. I knew something was up. We were playing the Blues, my last game for the Golds, and I was at first base. I had never played first base in my life. And for real good teams, I never played there again, except for 35 and over baseball. So I knew something was up. After the game, Bucky took myself and Kurt Kovash to the side and asked if we were willing to move up to the Blues. Sure, why not? I'd love to. So I don't ever regret that move. I got a lot of playing time. I've had a lot of great coaches, like I said, through my history. Had Ron Gardenhire, Don Leppert, who was the first base coach for Pittsburgh Pirates when Roberto Clemente hit his 3,000th hit. So he actually was the one to receive the ball and bring it to the dugout. Had Scotty Alger as a coach. They were all really good. Steve Timmer as a coach for 9 games. Worked with him quite a while over at Matson Ballpark. And with Dan Jeanette, who's going to be our next speaker up here. Speaking of Dan Jeanette, he and I used to umpire games on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the Babe Ruth League. One of us would be behind the plate, one of us would be on the field. And with Babe Ruth back then, there were always 2 games, so we'd switch between games. So the one guy would be behind the plate, the other guy would be working the field, and we would always have a pocket full of grass seed. Because you got these Babe Ruth players that are 13, 14, and 15. They're out there playing in the grass. We'd see a little spot, we'd throw down some grass seed. And tell you what, back in those days, Matson Ballpark was immaculate. It was probably one of the nicest playing surfaces in the state of Minnesota. We want to get it back to that again. Back to that again. But one guy I really want to touch on is Bucky Bergow. I've probably learned more about baseball from that man than I have from anybody in my life. I played 3 years of blues with him, for him. 2 years at Concordia I played for him. Came back after my days with the Twins and coached with him. I have learned so much from that guy. And he used to work at Matson Ballpark when I was the kid cleaning the dugouts for 25 cents, you know. So I learned a lot well before my knothole and cadet days from him. And he is the heart and soul of Moorhead baseball. So I guess I'll just leave it with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Thank you. Thank you, Chad Swanson. Nice memories and all those coaches that helped you out over the years. All right, next up, ladies and gentlemen. Last but not the least, as they say. And he's also going to be our keynote speaker once I introduce him to Mr. Dan Jeanette. Dan graduated from Moorhead High School in 1984, but his Spud's journey began much earlier as a bat boy in the 1970s. He played for the Blues from 1983 to 85, with the 1985 marking the inaugural year of the Super Senior, age 19 eligibility. Dan went on to play 1 year at Golden Valley Junior College and 3 years at Valley City State University, earning a bachelor's degree in communications education. Dan began coaching as a teenager and completed his coaching career in 2024 at the age of 58, serving as an assistant coach for his son Brock at Onalaska, Wisconsin High School. His coaching stops over the years included the Golds, the Valley City Babe Ruth, and American Legion, and a second stint with the Moorhead Youth Baseball programs, as well as junior high and high school coaching in Lewiston, Minnesota. His love of sports extended far beyond baseball. Dan was a longtime basketball referee and football official, and he umpired in high school, Legion, and college baseball, and a highlight of his career was his decade as a professional umpire, working from rookie ball through AAA from 1991 to 2000. And we're hoping to hear a few of those umpiring stories this evening from Dan. After retiring from professional umpiring, Dan began a career in the dairy manufacturing industry. From 2001 to 2007, he served as production supervisor at Cass Clay Creamery, and he is now the director of operations at Immunodynamic Techmix in Wisconsin. Dan married Don Holland in 1986, and they reside in Platteville, Wisconsin. They have 2 sons, Brock, a 2003 to 2005 blues ball player, and Ryan. With more free time these days, Dan enjoys biking on his trails, yoga, and martial arts. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a nice round of applause for Mr. Dan Jeanette. Dan, thank you.
And one quick one, Bucky said I hit a few buffets too, so that's probably what I've been up to, right? But so Bucky, I got a couple lines for Bucky, but I got to get into this first. But thank you for having me today. Thank you for asking me to be here. Congratulations to everybody going in. Chad and I were neighbors. I just learned that he's got a bunch more seniority than I do at 7 months, but I showed up a little bit later. But To the players, thank you for being here. Good luck to you guys. Talk to you coaches a little bit. Timmer, My goal here today is to tell a little story about a Moorhead kid growing up without crying and without swearing. So I got a few things to talk about. But like Chad Swanson, my family moved in to 1217 North 11th Street it was 1974, so I was 8 years old. Walked down the block. I don't know when I met Chad, but I looked at Matson Field and I'm like, this is going to be an amazing thing. It's a baseball field. It looked like Major League Field for us. And from that day on, the whole goal was to become part of the Golds and the Blues as a player. So we did everything you could to grow up, playing, looking for the Blues. I spent a lot of time in the corner of the dugout on the other side of the fence as a little kid working for Halver Johnson. Halver, it's hard not to talk about this today, but knowing Halver and Timmer, they're good guys. Steve Timmer. There we go. Yeah, about 30 seconds in here, I'm already getting wet. Anyway, but I worked for Halver early on, and Halver, if you didn't know him, and I just kind of talked about this not too long ago, he was kind of that Thurston Howell III looking dude when you meet him. He'd have this jacket on and his business pants. He carried around a briefcase, and he had us all running around chasing foul balls for 25 cents or lollipops or whatever it was. But great guy. Got to know him later as a player. Coming through, we chased those foul balls. 13 years old, we got to play on Matson Field. I don't know if you guys had that same highlight. Once you got on that field, it was like making the big leagues. We were really happy to be there. Growing up, again, 14, 15-year-old Babe Ruth, same thing. Chad and I, who started umpiring together, he talked about all that. It was kind of funny because Chad and I reached out to him a while ago, and he's got a different path than I did, but I didn't want to cover some of the same things that he did. I pulled into town, went over to Matson Field just to look at the place. I don't know, a couple minutes in, Swanee pulls up. He's like, hey, how you doing? So, we grew up there, we met there. Anyway, that's pretty cool. Okay. Anyway, so where do I go? I was the first super senior. There's a difference between the guys that go in the Hall of Fame throwing 30, I don't know how many strikes that was. It was crazy. I probably faced you the whole time because that's my batting average was 0. Anyway, there's guys that go in because they're great players. They got good numbers. I'm here tonight speaking to you. I didn't have great numbers. I was slow. Bucky, you could probably tell him how slow I was. I was really slow a foot. I was about a 400 hitter, but my average was, 250. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, played first and third for the guys. For Bucky, Chad, or was it one of the Cappuses was coming up and they asked me to move to third base. So I moved to third base. A lot of things that I've learned through Legion Baseball. When you guys are growing up, there's life lessons that are happening every day. Like they said, don't take it for granted. Pay attention. You don't know that they're life lessons at the time, but you live them as you get older. I went to Valley City State and played on a team in 1987. We ended up in the Hall of Fame there. So that's a real quick version of my playing career. But any story I tell, it connects to Moorhead baseball. I was a coach with Timmer. My brother Scott is here. My family, I'll get to you guys a little bit, but my brother played on that 88 team that went to the World Series. I coached those guys with Timmer, a couple years earlier on the Golds. Had a great connection there, but when Scott and the Blues were in New Ulm, New Ulm was referenced earlier, but in New Ulm, there was a guy I was umpiring. His name, I didn't know what it was, but when I looked at him, he was a lot different than what we were doing as amateur umpires at home. He just did it different. And I found out his name was Babe. Don't remember his last name. Found out they were in this trailer down the left field line. I went and asked him, how do you learn how to umpire like that? And he reached in his bag, threw out a brochure to Harry Wendelstadt Umpire School. That was in 1988. Chad Swanson's pitching for Kenosha. Don and I jump in the car. We're going to go down and hopefully see him pitch. We get there. I'm looking at a couple guys coming in the corner. I find out they're the umpires. I watch them work. I'm like, maybe I can do this. So I decided in 1990, we kind of lined it up to go to umpire school, and I picked Harry Wendelstadt Umpire School. We get there, and there's 265 guys at that school. At the time, Joe Brinkman had a school, and Jim Evans had a school. So there's probably 400 or so guys trying to get a job in the minor leagues. And I had learned a lot from the local guys. Ben Franson was a guy that I went to read a lot with. Doug Zulsdorf over the years. A lot of guys. If I start mentioning them, I'd forget too many of them, but they helped me a lot to get ready. I went to umpire school. I ended up finishing third in umpire school. If you guys heard the name Laz Diaz, Laz was second. Greg Gibson was fourth. I finished third. Laz and Greg spent 25 years in the big leagues. Greg retired. Laz is still there. I got called. I was student teaching in Oriska, North Dakota, and I got called to go to. Ralph Nellis called me and said, "Hey, go to Great Falls, Montana. Welcome to the Pioneer League." So that was my first job in professional baseball. It was my first time on an airplane. Flew to Great Falls, Montana, I think the meeting got redirected. Anyway, we show up. Ralph doesn't have any money for us. He doesn't have any uniforms for us. He doesn't have anything. And my partner and I are going to somewhere in Canada, our first trip. He says, when you get there, tell me you're on vacation, go work the games, and your stuff will come in the mail in a couple days, whatever. So our first trip, we go in, we get through the border, and the guy kind of looked at us like, sure, you're going on vacation. Anyway, get to the hotel. We're going to take a nap, knock on the door, and there's two guys standing in full Canadian mounted, I don't know, the red jacket, the whole thing, the cap on. They said, you guys are umpires. We know that. You show up at the field, you're going to get arrested. I would suggest you pack a bag, go back to the border, get your paperwork in order, and then come back. Well, that's what we did. So that's kind of how my career started. Maybe that was a sign. I'm not sure. But anyway, so the guys that I was working with, his name was Vincent Price III, real name. And we were working our butts off in the Pioneer League, running around, two-man crew. And professional baseball is different. We learned that really early. There's language that happens there that's not good. If you don't say the F word, nobody pays attention to you. Anyway, Vince and I are getting our lunch handed to us. All of the teams are, sick of seeing us already, and we're 2 weeks into our career. We stop at Subway, might have picked up a 12-pack of Coors Light, and we're sitting at the pool. We had to make a decision. Are we going to make it as umpires, or what are we doing here? We had to change what we were doing, and my wife I was a nice guy before I went to be an umpire, and then I came back and I was a little different, but there's kind of how it works out when you're on the road. But Vince and I decided to change it up a little bit. We had to take a lot of time to just do it the right way and take charge. There was a tip that I got one time when I was in umpire school. They said, hey, if you have any problems with the manager, talk to the manager, pull out the lineup card, address your problem. They'll listen to you, and then they'll walk away, and you're not showing them up, or you're not talking, all that kind of stuff. Well, I pulled it up. PJ Carey was the first guy I tried it on, and his guys were chirping, and we should have been ejecting a lot of guys, but we're trying to figure out how to keep guys in the game. And I got my butt chewed that night. PJ Carey unloaded on me. Nobody's ever chewed my butt, not even my dad, like this guy did. So he told me, he said, this is professional baseball. I don't care what you do. If they say something that they deserve to get thrown out, throw them out. I'm here to train these guys how to play. That's it. So we changed, and somehow it worked out. I spent another year in the Pioneer League. I got promoted to the Midwest League, and there I met a guy. The league president was George Spelius, one of the best guys I've ever going to meet in professional baseball. George, his son-in-law ended up being Marty Foster, which is a major league umpire a few years down the road. But George was always concerned about us, making sure that his line was eat your vegetables, get your sleep, that kind of thing. I was in his league probably 4 weeks or so. I get a phone call. We drove into Beloit, which was where the league office was. And George Spelius called me up, and he said, hey, Dan, he goes, what are you doing for lunch? I don't skip lunch, you can tell that, right? Anyway, so I said, hey, where are we going? He says, I need to speak with you. Come down to the league office, which is right across the street from the country club. And we met there for lunch. And George made sure I had my salad and I had my stuff, and I ordered my food. We got done eating. He says, Dan, why are you doing this? He says, what are you doing umpiring? You're married. You got a kid at home. Why are you here? And I said, I want to go to the big leagues. That's the whole goal. I want to get to the big leagues. And he says, well, that's good. He goes, I've heard some things from people that are, responsible for umpires. You got talent. There's a lot of people behind you. George says, I'm having a couple things going on in my life right now. He says, 3 things are very consistent in my life. He says, at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock at night, my wife and I are going to sit down and we're going to have a cocktail. At 9 o'clock, if I'm home, I'm going to tell her I love her and we're going to bed. And he says that at 10:30 at night, the fax machine's going to go off and it's going to be another ejection report from you. And he goes, one of those 3 things needs to change, and if you need help figuring out which one it is, maybe our conversation is over. So I chose to talk to George for about another hour. He wanted me to figure out how to keep people in the game. So go back to the Pioneer League, how we didn't take any crap from people, and we threw a lot of people out of games. It was just part of it. And when I got to A-ball, they decided it's time to pump the brakes a little bit. So I learned how to keep people in the games. I got fined one time in the Midwest League. We had a guy from one of the teams, I can't remember, it was the Chiefs from Peoria. He always wanted to reference the league office. And if I could get him to say the league office with the F word or something about George Spelius, then their night was over. I would run them. So George says you can't do that anymore. So I was a little bit of a smart aleck, I think, in those days. Anyway, I wrote the number of the league office on the bill of my cap with George's name on it. And this guy used to come out and say, I need to call George. This call was this or whatever. I need to call George. So I took my hat off. I said, well, just in case you don't have the number, here's the number. And he went crazy on me. So as far as in my face, kicking dirt, the whole 9 yards. But that's something that you learn how to handle. He fined me $50, told me not to do it again, and we survived. But I get promoted to the Florida State League, which is high A ball. Start working games. There was a stretch there where between what I was doing at home, I was working 300 days a year between baseball, football, and basketball, some type of game. So officiated a lot of games in that 10-year span. But get to the high A league, and that's when he started running into those references about meeting your heroes, and some big names got thrown out. Well, I started meeting them, but again, I'm not a player, I'm not a fan, I'm an umpire, so they look at you a lot different. I was a huge baseball fan. I loved watching guys play from when I was a little kid. Carl Yastrzemski's a name I remember, Jim Rice, all those guys, a lot of Twins players and stuff. I met all those guys at spring training. I'm at spring training one year, and it's the Boston Red Sox. And it's a B game. It's the A team and the double A team they're playing. And it's a Sunday afternoon, or excuse me, Sunday at 10 a.m. in the morning. And we're happy because we're going to get out of there. The game's going to be over 1 o'clock. We can spend a little time in Florida. And I kept hearing, the game started, I kept hearing some stuff happening like behind me. And it was words I can't say here tonight, right? It was F this, F that, I'm not here to see this, I'm not here to see that. And every time I looked around, there was nobody there. Well, one time I got a flash of a guy going by on a golf cart. And I'm like, that's the guy, right? I don't know who it is, but that's the guy. A couple innings later, he's right behind me, and he's making a real strong effort to get my attention. And I looked over at the dugout, and I said, I have had enough, and I started walking towards him. And then as I'm a few steps away, and it's kind of like Mattson, the fence. You're walking over towards the fence, and this guy's sitting in his golf cart. I feel a real strong grip on my shoulder, and it was Jim Rice. He says, Dan, I got this. He goes, it's sad to see Yaz like that. I said, that's Carl Yastrzemski yelling at me? And he says, yes, it is. And he kind of like yells out, he says, Yaz, Dan has heard enough. And Yaz goes, Dan, you've heard enough. And he kind of stood up and he puts his hand in his pocket, and I can't even tell you what he did when he pulled out, but he goes, F you, and this is for you. And he flipped me off, and off he went in the golf cart. So, I mean, that's my Carl Yastrzemski story. And I got a wallet here that I found online where they take old baseball gloves and make wallets out of it. And this is my Carl Yastrzemski wallet. And I have engraved inside what he said to me, and I can't read it. So it's just a little something to remember. So there was that one. There's one other thing that happened a few things happened. I get a chance one day to work another B game. It's the Boston Red Sox. And they say, oh, by the way, Roger Clemens is pitching. I was in the Florida State League, which is high A, so I'm quite a ways removed from the big leagues, but they said, you're going to work the plate. I show up, and it's Ed Hickox, and I can't remember, I should remember, I'll remember sometime during this talk, but 2 major league umpires are working with me. And the Tampa Bay Devil Rays bring over their major league team. The first 4 hitters, I remember 3 and 4 was Boggs, McGriff. And there's Roger Clemens is on the mound, and we're going to go, he's going to throw 60 to 80 pitches. So I'm standing out there. Here comes Boggs. He's up. He goes, Dan, what league are you in? And I had my Florida State League hat on. And I said, Florida State League. He goes, high A. And he looks over to Fred McGriff. He goes, high A strike zone. Get ready. I was like, oh, great. How's this going to go? So Clemens is up there. Here comes Boggs. There's a runner on first. And it's like 1 ball, no strikes. And the pitch, if this is home plate, the pitch is, for me and where I'm at, it's a couple inches flirting with that inside corner. Strike 1. Boggs goes, that pitch is like, he knew exactly how far off. I was like, holy smokes, this guy is good. He knows exactly that ball's off the corner. So it's 1-1. I think he fouled the next pitch off. Next pitch comes in, same pitch. I ball at this time because I just learned from Wade Boggs. He knows where the strike zone is. I better figure it out too, right? So we're three batters into this game. I call ball. It's full count. I got Clemens. You've seen him on TV with other umpires. Puts his glove over his face. And there's nobody around, and he's like, "What the is going on?" And I'm like, "Ball." So 3-2. Anyway, he grounds out into a double play. The two umpires are kind of giggling at me. Ed Hickox comes around and he says, "Hey, welcome to big league baseball. It's that different." Wade Boggs comes by me on his way out to third. He goes, "I know both of those are strikes, but if you give him both, he's gonna always get me out, right?" Well, Clemens, he comes by and he's like, "Well, they're both probably balls. So, but if I don't get one of those, Boggs is gonna keep hitting on me all day long." So that's how close they were. But anyway, so that's a little fun. When I got promoted to the Florida State League, I took umpire's name. Matt Hughes was his name. He got promoted to Double-A. I show up. It's the New York Mets. John Tamargo is the manager, and I walk on the field and he starts yelling, "Matt, you're terrible. Matt, you suck. Or Matt, what are you doing?" And I'm like, I look over and I'm like, "I'm not Matt. Matt got promoted. How the heck did he get promoted? You're just as bad as he is. How'd you get here?" All that kind of stuff. So that was my introduction to John Tamargo with the Mets organization. A little story about Matt Hughes. He got suspended in the Florida State League for John Tamargo had an issue with the substance abuse. Matt Hughes chose to use the third baseline chalk line to kick it one day and say, "Hey, snort that," so you can figure out what it was. So Matt was known for that, right? Okay. So now John Tamargo and I don't get along. I get promoted to Double-A. I'm up in Double-A. We're in Portland, Maine, and here's John Tamargo. He's not liking anything I'm doing that night. He's still calling me Matt, I think, for whatever. Anyway, something happens. He comes out and he goes, it's the worst argument that I've had for a guy. He took his clothes off. Some guys take their shoes off and say, "You stink," throw you the shoes, all that kind of stuff. He took that stuff off, got into my face, and I couldn't get him away from me. And I finally stepped back and I said, "You know something, John? Matt was right." And he stepped back and he went, "What did you just say?" Suddenly now he knows I'm not Matt. And I kicked the chalk line. And I said, "Matt was right. You should probably spend more time messing with the chalk line." And that man was going to kill me. I swear to God, he was going to kill me. After the game, it wasn't over. He was in my locker room in his little wife beater T-shirt wanting a piece of me. And my partner at the time didn't let me go in there. So I would have probably lost my job because I was heading in there. And that's kind of how weird it gets sometimes. After Double-A, we were in Binghamton, New York one time, and married to Dawn. I'll introduce my family. Dawn of almost 40 years, my wife, my brother Scott, my mom and dad, Mick and Becky, Stipe, family, thank you for coming. Dawn's been through everything with me. In Binghamton, New York, at the hotel, that's when you still got messages at hotels. They said, "Hey, call your wife. She needs to talk to you." And fast forward, she's pregnant. I'm working with Mark Wagner. I told him, "Hey, I'm gonna work this series. I'm done. I'm going home." So I thought that was good news. I picked up the phone and told Dawn, and she doesn't swear very often, but she did that day. She says, "You're not quitting." She said, "I'm not going to have you, whether it's 6 months from now, 6 years from now, whatever, regret that you quit. You're going to stay in it. You're either going to make it to the big leagues or you're not." So I stayed, went to Double-A, got a chance after that to go to the Dominican League. Between Double-A and Triple-A, they said it would help you get promoted. We were hired, 3 Americans were hired, Marvin Hudson, Mike Fichter, and myself, and they hired us because the Dominican umpires bet on the games. So they wanted the 3 Americans over there to work the plate. We worked 72 plate jobs in a row. If you ever worked home plate, it's a lot of work. So 72 plate jobs in a row. It was Luis Polonia and Tony Pena were player coaches on the team one night, and there was something happened where I wasn't the umpire, but they chased the umpires out of town. They were throwing stuff at him. It got real messy. They chased them out. Joel said he thought he heard gunshots, whatever. We said we're not going back. We had to meet with Major League Baseball. We had to meet with the Dominican League president, and we had to sit down and said, "If you guys are not going to go to this field or this game, you're going home." Well, we decided to go in. Who's the first guy in? It was me. They said, don't worry, if they do anything to you when you're there, we got you covered. So we're a few miles out of town. We pull over to these little chicken stands in the Dominican, and these two guys come walking out of this chicken stand, and they're dressed in full riot gear. They got machine guns. They got whatever you're going to go to a riot with, these guys have it on. And they get in the van. And I was pretty impressed, thinking that was pretty good. A few miles in towards the town, we're getting closer. A couple of guys pull in with the little sidecar motorcycles, and they got M16s, and they're following us. And I'm like, man, what's going on? So we get into the city, and there's fans on both sides, and it's the soccer mentality. If you watch the World Baseball on the TV, the World Baseball Classic, it's Latin fans love baseball. They get into it, and they're pretty passionate. And all these signs, I didn't speak Dominican, Spanish, or whatever. I said, what is all, they'll kill the umpire. And they had us on little sticks, and they were, guys dressed in blue, and they're going to kill the umpire. So I get to the stadium, and there's fans waiting by the gates to come and get us. And like 50 more of these guys show up, and they make a line for us to go to the locker room. And I'm like, holy cow, this is something. And as soon as they let the door open to the van, the fans come rushing in. And these guys were holding off fans till I got in the stadium. Once I got in the stadium, the roof the ceiling above our dugout was shaking. The fans knew where our umpire room was, and they were jumping up and down. I don't know, hoping to break it or something. I don't know, but they were letting us know they were there, and they were not happy. About 5 minutes before the game, this guy knocks on the door. His last name was Ortega, and I kind of had a man crush on him instantly. He was this dark-skinned, salt and pepper-haired guy, and he had more medals on his shirt and his jacket than I'd ever seen before. He says, I'm here signed by Major League Baseball to protect your butt. Nothing's going to happen to you. So the manager was Alfredo Griffin. And we walk, the stadium is very loud, and they're chanting all kinds of stuff. It would be like at Matson Field, where you walk out, end of the third base dugout, and the equipment room, or that's I guess it's first base at Matson. But I could walk out to left field, and there was a spot for the batting cage. And it was the only time I've ever happened to me in my life. The stadium, and like you said, the crowd grows, but it was roughly 25,000 people there. It went from left field corner all the way around, and it got dead quiet. So impressive, but also kind of weird. But anyway, so kind of where I'm going with some of this stuff is what I've learned in the Blues: perseverance, integrity, commitment. You want to be a good teammate, right? I'm working for these guys. I want to do a good job in the league. I start walking out. When I get out to the home plate, Alfredo Griffin walks up to me, and he says, well, you're going to die here tonight. And I'm like, what? He says, I got people in the crowd that are going to make sure one of you guys are done tonight. And he goes, I want it to be you. And Ortega said, that's not going to happen. Make sure of it. And then about that time, the rest of those guys I told you about in all riot gear walk out, and they stand at the backstop with their guns at the crowd. So you guys know Naked Gun? Okay. I suddenly went into Naked Gun, and I was like, what am I doing here? I'm standing at home plate. A couple seconds before it's going to start, I got to put my mask on, and here we go. And that first pitch was the closest I ever got to Naked Gun in my professional career. I called a strike. The place went crazy in a good way, and we played. 4 innings in, Alfredo got thrown out for a call. He just went weird, and they put him in zip tie handcuffs and walked him off the field, and he spent the night in jail. So anyway, one more Dominican story, and it involves a citizen strike. I was the one that went furthest out. The citizen strike, if you've ever been a Dominican, they protest wages and electricity. I went from Santo Domingo to San Francisco, had a 4-hour game, took a shower, got in the van, and it was midnight. And anybody on the road after midnight was subject to, you were not aligned with the citizen strike. I'm driving back. There's burning cars in the road, piles of burning tires. And I come through one of them, and I see a bunch of guys standing there, and they're all they got all their stuff on, and they're standing with guns. And I had a couple El Presidente beers on the way back, and the windows were down in the front, flat nose Volkswagen van. And we stopped, and the guys were standing off to our left, and I turned like this, and what I felt on my head was a rifle, the butt end of the barrel of the rifle, and I looked up, and it was like a 16-year-old kid looking at me, and I was like, whew. I go, Raphael, we got a problem. So anyway, we made it through that. I got back to the hotel that night. Meanwhile, Dawn's calling me every night, how's it going? I'm like, good, we're doing fine, everything's good. So I didn't want to make sure she wasn't there. But I know there's been a lot of nice things said tonight about a lot of guys in the room. A lot of my childhood heroes are here. Chuck Erickson's my all-time favorite blues player when I was a kid. If I could be Chuck, that's who I wanted to be. So here's the emotional part, right? Swanee, he's been my friend forever, and I love the guy. Scott Womry, one of the good guys. Where's Lem? Mark Rice. So Mark Rice was a catcher. I didn't start catching until I was in college, but Coach Dew told me, he said, if you want to play on this team, go learn how to catch. So that's what I did. But Lem, always appreciated how you rolled. Stu Hoganson, just a childhood hero. You're just a friend of the family. Love you, bud. Right? All these guys in here, I hope you guys are looking at Moorhead Blues players and Golds players and saying, hey, I want to be like that guy. Because I know we worked our butts off to impress, just do the right things. Again, a lot of nice things said about Bucky. I'm going to add to that. Best coach I've ever had, hands down. And I don't know, hopefully most of the guys agree with that. But I've learned more baseball from Bucky. I was that kid that had a chance, that super senior, that first year, I was given the opportunity to maybe stay back and play with the Golds. And I chose to stay with the Blues because my high school teammates were on that team, and I wanted to stick with those guys. But that 83 team was the best Legion team I've ever played on. I spent a lot of time probably bugging Bucky because I was the guy that didn't get to play a lot, but I stood back there and I'm like, why'd we do, what are we doing? What'd you do? Why'd you, kind of not questioning him, but trying to figure out more about the game. But Bucky, hands down, best coach I've ever had. Appreciate everything you did for all the guys, myself included. Just Moorhead baseball wouldn't be where it's at, so appreciate that. I don't know where we can wrap this up, but let me check my notes. I'm blowing through these things pretty fast. Oh, man. Anyway, but I can tell you a couple of stories how my career ended in baseball. Don knew all the names of the supervisors. I was in a position to where I was getting close to Major League Spring Training. I got to work in Coors Field. I got to work at Safeco Field. I worked some games in Old Bush Stadium. I worked some games in the Phoenix, Arizona, in their big league park. So I had my chances to get in there, but it just didn't end up panning out. But there was one year we were close, and the phone rings, and it was about time spring training assignments come out. And Paul Runge, I'll get the name right. Paul Runge calls, and Don answers the phone and asks for me. And Don does the whole phone. I think this is it. So when it was going to happen, if you got to big league spring training, you got $10,000 up front, went and worked the games, and it was a chance for you to make an impression and get to the big leagues. Paul Runge's family, he gets on the phone, tells me he's watched me work. We got reports that you're doing a good job. He says, as you know, I was a major league umpire for 35 years. My dad was an umpire. My grandpa was an umpire. And my son, Brian, is in Double-A and working his way back, coming up through the big leagues. And about that time, it started to not feel like, congratulations, Dan, you're going to spring training. He says, I noticed you wear number 5 on your jersey on the roster for the Pacific Coast League. I said, yes, sir, I do. And he goes, well, that's our family number. He goes, would you be willing to give up your number for my son, Brian, who's coming into the Pacific Coast League this year? And he asked if it had any sentimental meaning. I like George Brett and Albert Pujols, but that's not why I picked 5. I picked 5 because it was a single-digit number, and it was cheaper to put on my uniform than a 2-digit number. So he sent me a check for $250. I gave the number to Brian, and Brian was a big league umpire until he couldn't pass a drug test, and he was one of the first guys in a long time going. So I got a phone call after the 2000 season from Branch Rickey. He was my league president. And in 1999, they had the big league strike. There was 25 major league players how that story goes, during the All-Star break, there was a union struggle with the major league guys. The Hirschbeck brothers wanted to create new union. Richie Phillips was an old school kind of a Hoffa person that was, break your leg kind of. It was just two different things. They wanted to stay union, but they wanted different representation. So they invite all the major league guys to Boston during their All-Star break. And what was going to happen was, hey, we're going to sign resignations and use that as our bargaining tool during contracts. Half the room knew there was a coup going on. You signed your name. You were one of the guys that were Major League Baseball was going to pick. The other guys signed like Daffy Duck, Mickey Mouse. Those were thrown out. So 25 guys got fired, Well, that meant 25 AAA guys got hired overnight. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My partners were Doug Eddings, Eric Cooper, and Ron Culpa. We got back to the hotel. There was a guy in a nice suit, had 3 boxes. That was their major league contracts. They got signed. I worked the 2000 season, got released. Branch Rickey calls me up and he says, hey, there's a lot of weird things going to happen. It's too long a story to tell here, but I'll just share with you that the guy that was kind of equal to where I was, he spent 18 years in the minor leagues trying to get a big league job before he got hired. So that would have been probably the trek I would have been stuck in for another long time. And, you know, blessing in disguise, like Branch Rickey said, I think it was, got home, got to become a coach and stuff like that. So I can't leave here without telling one more story. And Bucky and I, one year, we ran into each other at a game. It was, I can't remember the game, Bucky, maybe you do. It was Moorhead and a team from California, I think, maybe in a championship game of a tournament. I was working the bases. There's a runner on third, and I called a balk. Tony Kunka, left-handed pitcher, looked in for a sign, and I thought he came up and wanted to repeat the sign or whatever, and he came up too far, in my opinion, called a balk. Here comes Bucky. And Bucky was shocked and surprised that I made that call. And to Bucky's credit, he never swore anyway. He never, I don't know how you, I can't even repeat how you used to do it. You'd have to come up here and repeat that. But he has a way of saying things to people with the same intent as if you were swearing, but he keeps it clean, which I respected. Bucky just wouldn't leave the field. He kept kind of circling the mound saying, I can't believe you called that balk. I can't believe you called that balk. And got to a point where I said, Bucky, we got to get the game going. My partner that night was Ben Franson. He came out and said the same thing. Bucky, we got to go. Bucky took 3 steps off and came back. He goes, I can't, you guys are just, and I'm like, okay, you got to go. So it wasn't a proud moment. I talked to Bucky before this, told him I was going to tell this story. And, you know, it was just one of those times when you got to kind of break the chain, right? I respected the man, but there was a time when I just had to say, we got to play the game and can't stand out here and keep talking. So, but I always respect you, Bucky, and that was just one of the fun stories I wanted to make sure I told. But again, thank you for having me. Congratulations to all you guys. It's been a pleasure. Hope you guys found some enjoyment out of what I was talking about, but I can ramble on for all kinds of stuff and keep telling more. But good luck to you guys this season, Blues and Golds, okay? Did this for Steve Timmer, Hulver, you know, and all the rest of you guys. So thank you very much, and you guys enjoy your evening. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I got one more story. And it's Chad Swanson. Can I tell one more? Sure. Can I tell one more? Okay. Hey, real quick, the last story I got to tell involves Chad Swanson. I'm a couple years into umpiring. I'm at a table at spring training with a bunch of guys that are older than me, more veteran than me. And somebody goes, hey, there's some a-hole on the Twins organization that locked us in our hotel room. I think his name was Swanee. And it was Chad Swanson. A couple umpires were in the same hotel, and him and a buddy of his decided to penny lock the door in, and they got stuck in their locker or in their hotel room. So I guess you can Google that, and it's a true story. But I didn't admit that Chad was one of my best friends growing up at that moment, so I waited a few years later. But Chad played a role in some of that too, so he was a prankster. So again, thank you. I'm out.
Again, our thanks to Dan Jeanette, our keynote speaker for this evening. Any other words for the audience before we wrap everything up? Again, we sure appreciate everybody for coming this evening. Great food by the Legion. Thanks to Stu and Mr. Berg and everybody for helping to coordinate this, and thanks to all of our inductees this evening. It was a great evening. Good to get together and share some stories. And thanks again for coming, and feel free to socialize, well after we're done if you like too. So appreciate everybody coming. Enjoy the evening. Thank you.